Welcome to the latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino. This week I'm joined by Asim and Joe as we once again cover all things Celtic. Asim, all roads lead to Munich this week. We'll catch all that a wee bit later on in the show. Before that though, what's your take on how we done at the weekend as we chalked up win number 22 of our league campaign so far?
Hi Tino, hi Joe. Saturday I thought we were pretty professional. Routine win. I think we've had so many games at Celtic Park recently and it's just all kind of been very samey in the sense that we're so dominant, we're so comfortable. Scoring some great goals. And I thought especially the first half, I thought the performance was pretty bright, well worthy of the 2-0 lead at half time. And then second half was a bit more flat, but I think, again, job done. Players getting rested, players getting some game time, another goal for Daizen Maeda. All in all, a pretty solid day at the office.
Yeah, I was doing the post-match with Bridal yesterday and it was 3 goals, clean sheet, no injuries. Nothing spectacular, but straightforward win and that's all good. Joe, as I mentioned there, Daizen Maeda's strike was our 119th goal of the season so far. It's only February, and as we know, it's our 119th trophy, or that's in the bag after the League Cup win. So all in all, good stuff there. We could be heading for another historic season. You know, we've spoken last week about the fact that we're targeting the treble, we're scoring goals by the bucket load. Do you see us reaching that milestone again?
I mean, there's no reason why not. I think what's so good about, and I've said this before, what's so good about Rodgers' team is that there's goals everywhere. I think historically, we'll say non-Rodgers teams tend to be very reliant on one player. When you look at Dyla with Griffiths, I think, and largely with Kyogo, you were seeing record numbers for individual players. Rodgers has never really had that in any of his teams. I think he's always had a wide array of players that he could step in and rack those numbers up for us. So I think in that sense, definitely. I think there's definitely records in that will be broken, probably previously set by Rodgers himself. So I mean, if that's the standard Rodgers wants to set, is to actually break his own standards that he set before. I could definitely see records being broken this year.
And in terms of Daizen Maeda, 5 goals in his last 5 games, Asim, it coincides with a pretty highly talked about BBC article that was released on the morning of the Villa game. Pretty critical of his goal scoring record. And the article itself was by Amy Kavanagh. You might know Amy, she used to be on Axum. I think she's excellent at what she does, and a Celtic fan by all accounts. And I don't know if it's just part of the role or what she was assigned to do, but it was pretty scathing. And I don't know if he either read that or reads these things himself, but he's responded in the only way you can, and that's by scoring goals. Yeah,
he's so it's 5 in the last few games, and I think on Saturday as well, you could see he was maybe getting frustrated at times. I think he was making good runs, but sometimes wasn't at the end of it. And I was just delighted for him to get that goal. And what a goal it was, by the way. It's a goal of the game in a game of 3 good goals. And I think he's thriving on the fact that he knows he's the main man now. He knows that there's not that pressure as much in the sense of if he doesn't score in a game or if he's not scored after a certain amount of minutes, that's him potentially out of the team again for the next game. I think he's really enjoying being the main man. And I still think there's more to come from him in terms of his overall performances and play. And I think we will see more of that. But yeah, I think there's a decision to be made for Bayern. Obviously, we'll maybe touch on that later in terms of the starting lineup. But I think you could see the sense of relief when he scored as well. And like I say, what a tremendous finish.
There was a bit of that. I think the manager had the option to potentially take him off earlier on, give Johnny Kenny a bit more time. But my feeling, and it's just a gut feeling, I wouldn't really know the answer, but I think the manager kept him on to get that goal for his confidence. It just seemed like a smart move to make. And now, whether Daizen Maeda starts or not tomorrow night, he gets into it full of confidence as a striker with 5 and 5 would do. So, Joe, the other big talking point, of course, was Jota getting his first goal back at Celtic Park since his return. What's your thoughts on how he's been in the 5 games that he's now been involved in?
It's what we all loved about him before. It's just how you can just see technically how good a player he is. The Bayern game comes on and it's hard to expect an awful lot from him because he's still getting used to match fitness and from a domestic point of view where he's playing against a lot weaker opposition. But all in all, you can just see how good he is. And the fact that there's a financial side of it, of the fact we've managed to sign him back for so little money. I think he just seems so happy to be here. I watched his post-match interview and it just seems so, he said it's almost like he's second home and he's back home now. So, I think it's definitely good. He's been great since he's come in. I think the exciting thing is, I would suppose also as well, worrying thing is for anyone else is that he's only going to get better.
Yeah. That's that. He looks full of life, full of vigour, full of energy, and this is just the start of his return to Celtic. The goal itself's a really good finish, but I need to ask you your rating on the knee slide. It was exceptional.
It was.
Some folks are saying 10 out of 10. Is that possible?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I would definitely say so. Yeah. They rank very high up. I think Christopher Julian knee slides up there as well. He's
Chris Julian 2019 League Cup final is the benchmark for knee slides in a Celtic shirt, but Jota must be there or thereabouts. Asim, he's got 2 goals now and 1 assist, but it's clear to see that he's just a guy loving his football again. You can see him on the screen just now. He absolutely loved that moment. You know, that kind of sealed his return to Celtic Park, and he really embraced it, didn't he?
Yeah, the homecoming, obviously he's had a good couple of appearances and performances at Celtic Park, but to get his first goal back, you've seen how much it meant to him with the celebration. And I don't think any of it's an act, you know, like it's all genuine, it's pure emotion. Like you, Joe, I've seen the after-match interviews, and just comes across like he's found his home again, he's found his happiness and his joy playing football, and that's what he does to the crowd. Like you go, and when you see Jota's on the team sheet now, you're excited and you're looking forward to any time he gets the ball. He always makes something happen. He's already delivering what we know he's capable of. But as Joe said, I think he's going to just improve when he gets that sharpness and that physicality. But in terms of on the ball, defenders are struggling with him already because you don't know what side he's going. Yeah. And I think that's the real thing that we've got with Jota is he can go both sides now. You know, he put in a left foot cross for Ida that was brilliant, and then he cuts inside. It's just that unpredictability that gives us such an added dimension. I
think like the other night as well, the Bayern Munich game especially, we were watching it obviously from a different perspective. I actually felt that watching Michael Olise against Taylor, that I think at times I felt he'd get a bit unfair criticism, Taylor, with the goal. And I mean, if Taylor dives in at that point and doesn't show him on his left side, he's probably going to skin him, go down the right and then cut back on his left foot.
What do you think? So Brido's been quite critical of Taylor. I'm not so much. I think you're up against a really, really talented player there, and we're going to debate Greg Taylor and Jeffrey Schlupp just shortly. But I do think his positioning was wrong. You know, the flight of the ball, he kind of lost it and he was kind of turned the wrong way, and that was my criticism would be.
I think there's a lot to do before that. And my overall point with Joe, I mean, that's how a full back in Scotland must obviously feel coming up against him. Because I mean, see if you're a Stephen O'Donnell, whoever that's coming in that right hand side, I mean, it's almost like whether you stick or twist, you're probably still going to get skinned anyway. Like it doesn't really matter.
The very fact that he can turn you inside, outside, is he going to cross? Is he going to shoot? He's got it all, and I think it's just exciting to have him back. And I think he's going to kick on. He's 25 years of age, and he's now under a new manager at Celtic in the shape of Brendan Rodgers, and I think he'll kick on again. But the big plus is that having tried a different environment, a different lifestyle, and it's not quite worked out for him, you might well get him for longer than traditionally you would get for a player of his quality. You know, he's on a 5.5 year deal. Whether he sees that out or not, I don't know, but I think he's here for 2-3 years anyway.
Yeah, he's not going to be in a rush to go again after a good breakout. Like, you know, like sometimes, like Kuhn, for example, we all kind of maybe imagine there'll be interest in him. As there was rumours I seen the other day of like Newcastle, Brentford. So we're all probably preparing that he'll be the next one that they'll be interested in. But with the likes of Jota now, I think regardless of how much he might progress and get even better, I think we're going to have him here for a couple of seasons at least. Yeah, that's a big hope. Another player who had an impact on Saturday was Callum McGregor. That was his 7th league goal of the campaign. Joe might need to double check this, but I think it was his first inside the box. He's made a habit of kind of drifting into a certain area and getting his shots away from 20 yards. But what do you lads think his return to goal scoring form is down to? He's a guy that in the early part of his Celtic career, Ronnie Dylan and beyond, always had a goal in his locker. But that changed as he changed and his position became a more disciplined and defensive number 6. But what do you put the newfound goal scoring form down to?
I mean, look, what I've noticed this season in particular, I mean, it's corner that they always do. It's always the short corner. The guy comes short, they opens it up in the right hand. It's always in the right hand side where it opens up for McGregor, and more often than not, he'll have a shot. I mean, that alone is a starting point because it's clear that they're trying to build that segment of set pieces around McGregor. I don't think there's really anyone else in that midfield that's, as much as Hatate does score goals, I don't think he's known for being capable of doing what McGregor does outside the box. I suppose it's maybe a void that they were trying to fill with Matt O'Reilly leaving, is actually someone that's more of a threat in around that area.
Arne can be that guy though, can't he?
He can, but he's not really had the opportunity to yet, and I know a lot of his goals have been, you know, from penalties, and I'm sure he's capable, but I think McGregor's just clearly been handed that responsibility and he's absolutely flourished. And he done that in Rodgers' first spell, and Brown sort of took that sort of backseat. So
I didn't have you down as an Engels hater.
No,
No.
Starting rumours here.
Just putting words in your mouth.
Things can only get better.
What do you think, Asim?
Yeah, I think potentially something that Rodgers maybe is challenged McGregor to do more, because I don't think he scored a lot of goals last season. Obviously, Matt O'Reilly took a lot of that burden from midfield, and I think Rodgers has maybe said to him, "Look, you've got a good strike on you. We've seen that in the past, and his finishing from outside the box has been tremendous. And even what he did on Saturday there, he's got that in his game. He's got a real good burst of speed. He's technically very good, close control. It is something I think we can see more of from him. But because he plays that deep lying position, he doesn't obviously get into the forward roles as much. But I think, I put it down to obviously a collective of maybe the manager putting that challenge on him. You mentioned Arne Engels. I would like to see him scoring more goals from open play, and I think he gets into a lot of good positions. He takes a lot of shots, and he backs himself. I watched an interview of his a couple of weeks ago where he said that he thinks he's got a good shot. So hopefully that will be something again that with the manager's coaching we'll see Engels do as well.
Yeah, and it's clearly important to Brendan Rodgers to get goals from midfield. And as you touched on, Joe, earlier on, he wants goals all around the park. And I think he'll be encouraging the Kalmaks, the Reho Tatis, the Engels to add into what the front line's already doing. Just on that, in terms of a more general point, so we had 2 seasons of Ange Ball, very enjoyable stuff, and we're now deep into the second season, second time around under Brendan Rodgers. How did the 2 sides compare to you, Asim, in terms of style of play and the goals? We had a chat earlier on about the amount of goals, so we've talked about 119 goals this season alone, and there's almost a myth about Brendan Rodgers' side aren't as attacking as Ange and don't score as many goals, but that number itself blows that out the water. How do you compare the styles?
Different. They are different, even though they're equally as relentless in terms of goal scoring, and obviously the form this season is probably up there with any of our form. And I don't know, maybe in the last 15, 20 years, I'd imagine. Like, we're on course if we stick to the way we're going, probably for our highest points and goals scoring records. So yeah, there's no denying that. I think it is a slightly more measured build up than Ange's football. Ange's football was a lot more probably direct and non-stop. Throw-ins, goal kicks, corners, everything was done at speed. I think now we're a lot more measured, maybe a bit more patient in our build up, but equally it still wears teams down, and we score a lot of goals in second halves. We're still racking up some big wins. I think earlier in the season it was probably the peak, around that time, Leipzig and Aberdeen Cup semi. And then we've just, again, I think we've picked up in the last few weeks again domestically.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been the case. I ran the numbers yesterday when talking to Brido, and of the 26 league games so far, we're averaging 2.92 goals a game, so we're in good form there. Joe, what about yourself in terms of the 2 styles, Ange Ball v whatever we call Rodgers? Brodgeball? I don't even know. We'll go with it. I mean, as Asim said, I agree. I think it's all about, with Ange it was a fast start. And I'm looking at the big games where the games against Rangers, particularly under Ange. I mean, the 4-0 game, we were 3-0 up at half time. When Jota scored the chip, etc., that we were 3-0 up at half time, we won 4-0. Where the goal in the second half sort of came out of nowhere. If it was 3-0, it would have probably been fair. I thought you were meaning the midweek 4-0, that one in February.
That was 3-3,
3-0. But
we were 3-0 up at half time in that game as well. And again, we didn't really seem, from that game, as brilliant as well in the first half, we didn't really seem like we were going to score in the second half. It feels almost like we were throwing the kitchen sink in the first half. Under Ange, which is effective in itself because it kills the game. Yeah. But with Rodgers, it's slightly different. Now I look back at his first spell again. I'm using Rangers games as an example. We think of those games that we won comfortably. I mean, the game they won 5-1 at Parkhead, I think it was 2-1 at half time. Am I right in saying? I think it was only, we were 1-2-0.
We scored right on half time.
So it was 2-1 at half time. We won 5-1. 3 goals in the last 20 minutes. Am I right in saying? The game we won 5-1 at Ibrox, I think we were 2-0 up at half time. Now, by no means at that point were you thinking we were dominant, but I mean there was no real instinct to say it would be 4 or 5 by that point. Do
you think there's more patience under Rodgers? Do you think that's the message that, listen, there's 90 minutes here to wear a team down, you don't need to win it in the first 10 minutes?
Fitness. I think it could be a fitness thing. I think it could be, as you say, wearing teams down, and that's typically we are a fitter side, so why not wear them down over that 90 minutes? Well, really cash in at that point.
I think part of it is controlling the game. Yeah. If you control the game for long spells, eventually that's going to bear fruit.
I think you're right. Patience, and I think the kind of 2 examples, you look at that Real Madrid game, Champions League Ange, right? We went all out. It's complete opposite to maybe the Bayern game. But look at the two scorelines. So we went flat out at Real Madrid. Obviously, didn't manage to get the goal when we were probably well on top. And then second half, like you say, the fitness probably just took its toll, and Real Madrid managed to win 3-0 in that game. The Bayern game, more measured kind of approach from us. And then we got a second win, for the last 20, 30 minutes. So, and I think it's more suited Rodgers' style for European football, because I think we are more measured in possession, and it's more of a tactical battle. With Ange, it was more just like you say, 100%, 100 miles per hour, gung-ho from the off. And I think domestically that worked, because as you say, we blew teams away quite a lot. But I still think it's equally effective under Rodgers, because we're still managed to get in those big wins.
Yeah, and I think, the whole recency bias thing can kick in, because right now we're enjoying a lot of good football and good scorelines under Brendan Rodgers, but it's not to dismiss some of the great stuff under Ange. That was a really enjoyable 2 seasons under his stewardship. But it's funny, that Real Madrid game, it's almost caught kind of mythical status. It's like the longer times pass by, it's like we absolutely pummeled them for 45 minutes.
It was 55 minutes.
We didn't really. We played well, and Calmac hit the post and all that stuff. But Real Madrid are Real Madrid, and at the end of the day, you get what you get. And we lost that one 3-0, whereas a more patient and disciplined performance. And I thought it was really disciplined last week, by the way. It's so hard to concentrate for every single second, let alone every minute, against a Bayern Munich. And I thought, yes, of course, they scored just before half-time, but everything up to that was just a real sign of a team that were very well drilled and working very hard to limit their chances. But in terms of Ange v Brendan Rodgers as such, so Ange won 5 trophies out of 6 domestically over those 2 seasons, and Brendan Rodgers is on track to do the same if we manage to clinch the treble this time around. Speaking of ex-Celtic managers, I was chatting to you lads about the Amazon Prime feature of Brendan Rodgers sitting down with Martin O'Neill having a cosy wee chat up at Lennoxtown. What was your thoughts on that, Joe?
I enjoyed it. I think it's, I didn't really say anything that would necessarily blow me away, Rodgers. I think it was everything they were saying seemed to be the sort of sticking to the usual stuff that he comes out with, that the players are so professional, they get their job done, that we need to win every week, and obviously Martin O'Neill chipped in now and again with reflecting his time. So I think there was a lot of stuff that he's really covered off before. What I was really looking to, and I had a feeling they would ask this later on, but it was the same old, do you see yourself staying sort of past the 3-year contract? And it was almost if they were hinting towards that, and he was giving nothing away. So
he's been very clever, I think, second time around. I think what we now have is, and using his own words, a more mature, a more patient Brendan Rodgers, and he knows that something like that feature Asim could potentially catch some headlines. And there was a funny moment actually when he was talking about when he moved on. Brendan Rodgers was quite keen to skirt past that bit.
That was good, wasn't it?
Martin O'Neill pulled him back in and he gave him a wee bit of stick, but it was all good natured.
Yeah, like Joe says, there was nothing like to write home about in terms of anything eye catching. But it was an enjoyable wee segment and piece, and I thought that was the kind of highlight though, where Brendan was just talking about why he left the first time, and he was like, yeah, it was from a football perspective, and then Martin O'Neill's like, no young man, you just wanted to leave. And then Rodgers quickly tried to step back onto the topic, so I thought that was quite funny. But yeah, he's very clever and he's very measured in what he says, isn't he? So I think he spoke quite openly about how he maybe underestimated how much he hurt people.
It's interesting from that point of view. Yeah. He looks genuinely remorseful, and some folks won't buy that, Miff won't buy it, but I thought it was pretty sincere.
But the more he keeps saying that, the more you're like, right, well, he's not going to go again anytime soon then, because you don't just say that and then but again, that's where we could get stung.
But there's a contract at the end of the day. I think, whether he leaves halfway through the season or not, or whether he'll
do his 3 seasons, and then I think it depends on where the club are at.
And we'll have this debate at some point down the line. I'm really keen to see him potentially extend things. If we're successful this season, which we're on track to be, would he potentially enter into a 4th year or whatever it might look like? But we'll see how that goes. But I thought it was just interesting to watch him and Martin O'Neill shooting the breeze just about all things Celtic, especially with O'Neill taking on the kind of elder statesman figure now. I've been there, done that, and you're putting out his words of wisdom, and he slipped into a couple of Brian Clough impressions at different times as well. But no, it was good to watch. We'll link to that one in the show notes for the episode. It's about 20 minutes long, give or take. Before we get to the Bayern preview specifically, I want to touch on the left back question, the ongoing left back question at Celtic. And I put a question out on Twitter earlier on today which caught a fair bit of traction, and I simply worded it as, where does everyone stand on Jeffrey Schlupp? Has he done enough to get a start against Bayern Munich? And the responses were Mixed overall, but most seem to be edging towards Jeffrey Schlupp to start. Joe, what do you feel about that one? He's only had a few games as well. He's come back in at the same time as Jota, more or less. Is he ready to start such a game like this one tomorrow?
I mean, it is one of those ones where it's almost a, I don't want to say it, but it's almost like a once in a lifetime game. That this is your chance to just maybe go a bit further than you would ever expect in recent times. So I know Greg Taylor was getting a bit of stick, as we mentioned, about the goals and things, and I think Greg Taylor's really a fight. See, even going to the games, I always find that you notice a lot more what Greg Taylor does, maybe when the camera's not on him, in terms of his movement, in terms of how often he shows for the ball. He doesn't overly give the ball away in a 5 to 10 yard area, and I think he is really, really good at what he does. Whether tomorrow is probably the night that you would get the best out of him, or you would really need him, is a different question. And I think you've got an attacking threat in Jeffrey Schlupp as well. Having seen the one goal that was shared all the time when we were about to sign him, that
nice strike off the post at the weekend.
Beautiful, aye. So he has got that something different about him, Jeffrey Schlupp. So I would probably say Schlupp tomorrow, just purely for trying something a bit different and maybe catch them off guard. Whether that will make much of a difference to Michael Olise or not, we'll wait and see.
Asim Joe saying maybe the time to try something different, but it's such a game, the time to experiment. And also the point has been made that he spent time, about 3 years at Palace with Michael Olise, which is fine. It could give you an advantage, but I don't know, just say you played football with Ronaldo or Messi, knowing what they do is one thing, stopping them is another, and Olise is a serious talent. I think he's a great player actually, so not sure if that would play into the manager's thinking, but is it the time to experiment?
I think so, and I think it is a factor in a sense, because he will know his style of play. He'll have played against him in training quite a lot as well, so I think it could be a factor. And I think, again, it's at Champions League level, is I think where Greg Taylor, or European games in general, I feel like over the years that's where he's had a lot of the criticism, and he's been exposed a bit. Physicality, athleticism, that kind of stuff. Because you're right, domestically, at Celtic Park, I've kind of got a good viewpoint of it, and I agree. He does a lot of work in helping the midfield, making himself available. He doesn't give the ball away much domestically, but he's not put under a lot of pressure. You've seen that last week. 3 times he kind of put the ball out of play because they're pressing him. Whether that was wholly his fault or the guy who's passing it to him maybe not giving him the best pass, that's another debate. But I do feel like that kind of speed of thought and ability to retain possession when you're getting pressed, it's not just a Greg Taylor problem, that's a Celtic problem in general that we need to get better at when we're put under such intense pressure. But I like the look of Schlupp. I think he does offer something different. His attributes are different from Greg Taylor's, bit more physicality. I think it is the right opportunity to bring him in tomorrow and give him a go, because we've tried Greg Taylor before, and he's struggled.
And we know what happens. That's the thing. We've got a body of evidence to say that, don't want to repeat myself, but I'm going to. Greg Taylor is very capable domestically for Celtic, and he's been pretty sound for the 5 years or so he's been here. He's won 10 trophies. He deserves a lot of credit for what he's done on that stage. But when it comes to the European stuff, he has struggled to step up, and we've seen that time after time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And look, there's a lot of divided opinion. Maybe not even divided. I think it's a certain majority as well. And I'm not in that camp. I like Greg Taylor, and I wouldn't even mind him staying, longer term. But I do feel it's a position that we've wanted to strengthen, that we need to strengthen. And I think, especially on the European stage, and I do think Schlupp has shown enough. It is, it's only a couple of games, but I think he's done well enough in those games to suggest that he can make a difference. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. A few of the replies, Joe, were saying that, Taylor's not signed his new contract, so let's not start him. As it stands, neither he or Jeffrey Schlupp will be at Celtic next season, so that's just the way that goes. And I think the manager has to make his call less on contract issues and more on who is the best fit on the day. I'll read out a quote. I thought it was a really interesting quote actually from Alistair Johnson. He was speaking about Greg Taylor's current position, and I think he was quite keen to back up his teammate, as you would expect. He says, "I won't speak for Greg, but it must be difficult knowing that KT's coming in the summer. Greg's someone who often gets overlooked, but who helps us do so much with his ability to come inside and impact the play. If this is his last year, he'll be seriously missed on and off the pitch. But you can understand that he wants to play every week, and with Kieran coming back, that's maybe not going to happen. Whatever happens, though, he'll always give his best for the club, and we should back him for that." What do you think of those comments, Joe? Pretty accurate?
Yeah, I'd say pretty accurate. I mean, the thing about Tierney coming is that I don't I'm not really filled with confidence that he's going to play a full season. So in my head, I was thinking, do you know what? See if Taylor does stay. Surely in the back of his mind, he's thinking, right, okay, this guy's coming in, he's getting paid X. He's clearly came from where he's came from, plays with him at Scotland and all the rest of it, that he's clearly ranked higher in that prestige of ability as a player. But look at his record, injury-wise.
You're not having the KT thing then?
I'm having it. I'm just a bit like, see if you're Greg Taylor's position, surely you're not, surely in your head you're thinking, right, that's me not getting a minute next season. Surely there's going to be a case of managing Tierney's minutes.
Does he want to stay in by a bit part though? Because when everyone's, I tell you what, if you're there and Kieran Tierney's there and Celtic in a cup final, he's playing and you're not.
Any Rangers game, any Champions League game, any big game, Tierney's getting a nod.
But I mean, it depends what your motivations are, I suppose. I mean, is it a case of like just quality of life? I mean, is the abuse in Twitter and everything else going to be a factor in that? You don't know. But I think that, you know, he's still a good player in his own right.
Yeah.
I think he still fits really, really well into that system. And a more Scotland's a physical league, but in a more physical league where the quality team's better as well, how well will adapt to another team, I don't know. So
there's Dynamo Zagreb are the team that he's strongly linked with, and there is a suggestion that he may or may not have signed a pre-contract. Just being blunt on it, Asim, would you stay if you're Greg Taylor? Because he hears all the noise, his family hears all the noise. Is it worth the hassle? Could he get more money and less hassle by moving and potentially become the starting left back for wherever he goes? Because he won't be Celtic's starting left back next season.
I think Greg Taylor's maybe a victim of the fact that the club haven't addressed this left back position for so long, rather than, you know, because what Greg Taylor and Angus said, was it second season that he was brilliant, or his first season?
It was good. Him and Tony Dawson both stepped up in season 1 as inverted fullbacks,
and even season 2, I think he had a really good season. Was there not one year he was in the running kind of for one of our best players that season? So he's had good times at Celtic. He was rated, he was liked. He's obviously well liked in the dressing room. He's quite popular. The manager clearly likes him. He's came out and said it a few times, you know. So I think there's a lot there that, you know, for Taylor that would want, you know, he'd want to stay as well. But it's just whether you want to be a backup player. We spoke about it earlier about the likes of Tony Ralston as well. You know, there are certain players that maybe are content and happy, you know, even if they are just part of a squad. Whether Greg Taylor's now at this stage of his career happy to be part of a squad or wants to be the main man. And that's where it's probably coming down to here.
He's just a bit unconventional as well, though. I think that's the thing with Taylor, that he's not going to be the guy that's like gets the ball and he's going to hit the byline. No, and that's what every Celtic fan clearly wants. They want a type of player that will start an attack or get us up the park. He's not that type of player, and that is not going to be always loved.
The other thing as well, let's look at the types of teams that are going to be in for him. I think that says it all as well in the sense of where he stands in that kind of pecking order of top class, you know, left backs.
Yeah, Arsenal came calling for KT. With all respect, they're not coming calling for Greg Taylor.
I don't think any Premiership team would, you know. And
he might find himself, you know, around the Southampton, Ipswich level or the kind of West Brom, Norwich level potentially if he wants to stay in the UK. If not, he might go to a Zagreb or otherwise. I think as well there was a moment last week in the second half where Celtic broke. I'm sure it was Maeda that dropped in and won a very clever header to flick it out to Greg Taylor, who was coming up on the left-hand side but just didn't have the pace and power to drive on, and he had to cut back. And it was a time when Celtic were putting pressure on, and that in itself, just as a small moment, maybe sums up where we're at. KT would have burst a gut and got to the byline or powered through and done something. Greg Taylor, he was right to do what he done, because if you're not going to get there, you might as well retain possession. But that's where we're at with Greg Taylor. He didn't have the physicality and the power to get us forward on that occasion, and that's why we need to upgrade. And I think KT is that upgrade if he can stay fit, of course, to Joe's point. I just think Celtic find themselves in a quite unique position when it comes to recruiting who is going to be the backup. So KT is absolutely the starting left back, and rightfully so. So how do you pitch it to a Jeffrey Schlupp? Or there's Matthew Anderson, the youngster who gets rave reviews. He's on loan at the moment at Admira Wacker in Austria. Or anyone else that you're bringing in. It's like, how's it going? Fancy coming in and not playing a lot of football, but slotting in now and then. I mean, it's a hard pitch, isn't it?
Speaks to Joe's point earlier, though. Kieran Tierney's injury record is well known to everyone, right? And there'll probably be a case of, even between the club and KT, they'll probably be managing his game time initially. So he's not going to play every single domestic game, nor will he be needed to probably play every domestic game. So any potential backup will get probably more games than Ralston gets at right back, you know. And the likes of Schlupp, who's hardly played and featured for Palace for so long, I don't think he'd be opposed to coming, and like you say, he's already had a taste of Bayern Munich. He'll be winning a trophy at the end of the season. There's a lot to enjoy about being part of a Celtic winning squad. And as long as you're getting some amount of game time, and Rodgers likes his squad's pretty tight knit, I think someone like him or a replacement would still feature a reasonable amount.
Yeah, that's fair. I think as well, we spoke about Tony Ralston. Tony Ralston was a guy whose Celtic career looked all but done, and he was offered this chance, and it was probably pitched to him as you're not going to start every week, but we need guys like you to play backup, and Celtic do need those guys, the guys that aren't going to be disruptive if they're not starting every week. Tony Ralston, I think he's now started 3 out the last 5 or 6. He's playing his part as a backup to Johnson, but Johnson is the man with the shirt when push comes to shove. But it's harder to pitch that to a guy like Greg Taylor, who's more or less been the starting left back for 5 years and won those 10 trophies. So to say to him to step back to being a cover player, as opposed to saying to Tony Ralston to step up to be a cover player, it's a very different pitch. And I don't know how Celtic do that. There's rumours about, folks spoke about, is it James Penrice at Hearts, who seems to get decent reviews? I like Jack McKenzie at Aberdeen, who I believe's out of contract in the summer, and other players, and I wonder what route Celtic will go down. We'll need to watch that space closely. Let's get to the Bayern stuff. Obviously, it's the big factor in Celtic season. I was going to say in this week. It's really the biggest game of the season today, and I don't know, there's real mixed emotion. There's excitement in the very fact that Celtic we're in the mix. You know, if you lose 3 or 4-0 last week, you're going out there to make up the numbers and it's been a good run, and we'll see where we go next year. It's a slim chance, Asim, but it's a chance. We're going there with something. So what's your general feelings on the game before we get into some of the finer detail?
Yeah, I think even at 2-0 last week, I thought we're done here. I thought this is going to be going on 3 and 4. And that's testament to the manager and the players, because we could easily have, in years gone by, folded there and the game be away from us. I think the fact there's 1 goal in it tomorrow makes it really exciting, because provided Bayern don't go 1 and 2 up again tomorrow at some point, which they might, we're all realistic enough to appreciate that can happen, and it may well do. But I think just knowing when that game kicks off tomorrow, we're in this tie, 10, 15 minutes gone, if it's still 0-0, we're in this match, and it's such a mammoth challenge, but one that excites me, because I think if we can pull it off, and I know that's a long way away at this point, but what an opportunity for the players and manager to make, that's going to be historical if we can come through this tie. I'm trying to think back, we were speaking about it earlier, when the last time such a result against such high quality opposition, Barcelona obviously, but I would say away from home would be an even bigger task.
Maybe Liverpool in the
Seville run, but I would say Bayern are better than that Liverpool side, so
it would be huge.
It would be huge, and the fact that we're in it is massive. I just want us to keep it competitive. I want us to learn the lessons from Dortmund and Villa, with going 2 behind after 4 or 5 minutes, and just show that we belong at this stage, which I thought for large parts we did last week. One of my frustrations was obviously, and I don't know how you guys feel, I've not spoke to you about it yet, but in the first half, I wish we maybe showed a bit more belief at times and went at them, because you can see what happens when you go at Bayern's defence.
Yeah, I've heard the line a few times now that we showed them too much respect in the first half, and there is a balance there. You've got to give them the respect they deserve. There's World Cup winners in there and seriously talented players, but maybe a wee bit more belief in the first half, and we certainly showed that in the second half as the game went on, Joe. But to Asim's point, if it's still nothing each after 80 minutes, you've got a shout. You just need to steal that goal and see what happens. And very wishful thinking here, but it's a game that could, in theory, go to an extra time and penalties, and you never know. But what's your gut feeling on it, Joe? How do you rate the chances?
My gut feeling just now is I think back to when Bayern beat Dinamo Zagreb 9-2 at the start of the season, and I thought we drew 0-0 with them. That's my gut feeling. I'm just like, do you know what? We'll see what happens. By kick-off tomorrow, I'll be thinking, as time goes on, I'll probably be more and more confident and think, we're actually here. We are only a goal down. So I think that, we're in the best form we could be. I don't think we could really be in a better position in terms of, albeit Bernardo's maybe missing, and Forrest is missing, but generally speaking, in terms of form, in terms of how we're playing, you can only play who's in front of you domestically, and we've absolutely steamrolled past everyone we've played against in the last 6 weeks or so. So I think that really that gives us the best chance. By all accounts, they're not playing the best just now. I'm not saying that they've been poor, but the game at the weekend, they drew 0-0 with Leverkusen. I've seen a lot of things on Twitter. They've not registered a shot on target. Okay, maybe it's a bit, for Bayern standards, it's not great, but they did draw with the team that won the league last year, and they're also 5 or 6 points clear in the league.
8 clear, I think.
Aye, so they're in a pretty healthy position.
We're getting them at a good time.
We're getting them at a good time in terms of Bayern, their form maybe, and I've seen a lot. I don't know if you've seen this last week. It was in CBS. It was the Thierry Henry, Jamie Carragher.
Yeah.
So Thierry Henry spent 10 minutes saying about what's wrong with Bayern. Bayern don't look like a Bayern Munich team. And I'm like, see the first half, I thought, oh, brilliant.
I know.
Like, if that's what a poor Bayern team looks like, then it's quite worrying. So,
Asim, you caught that game on Saturday night. So Munich drew 0-0 each with Leverkusen at Leverkusen. And yeah, the stat that Joe mentioned was that they didn't register a shot on target, Bayern, and it's the first time since, I think it's May 2008 in the Bundesliga, they've failed to do so. There's something in that. But we're not going to kid on about it, and we can't underestimate just how good a side they are. What was your takeaways from that game, though?
Yes, I watched the game, and wow, that was a hammering essentially without scoring from Leverkusen.
Really?
I don't think they had an actual shot, even on an attempted shot, until like the 73rd, 74th minute.
Okay.
They were saying since records began, it was the lowest XG Bayern have ever had.
Similar lineup to the one they played against us?
Yeah, pretty much. I think only Sane didn't start from the forward line, and then a couple of changes in defence, but by and large about 7 or 8 of the starters.
Yeah.
But I think we can't read too much into it in the sense that they were 8 points clear going into it. Leverkusen were their main challengers. I think they went into it saying don't lose this game, and that's how they played.
A draw suits them.
Draw suits them. And Leverkusen were very good. In fairness, I was very impressed by them, and I was like, if I thought Bayern were good, Leverkusen looked even a level above in terms of the speed of play. Bayern at Celtic Park, I thought first half, like you, Joe, I was like, well, these guys are a level above. I don't know if that's when you're there though and you're nervy and you're watching it. Of course they are, like in terms of their speed of thought and their passing and just general power, and their pressing I thought was really good. They didn't give us an out ball. We couldn't really get out. But as soon as we then started having a go at them, now people might say it was because they'd got their 2-goal lead and maybe sat off, but whatever it may be, for the last 30 minutes, and I think Harry Kane and a few of their players and stuff said it after the game, they were hanging on. They wanted full time. So I think that speaks to our how we played for that last element of the game, and also to the fact that maybe like the TNT guys or CBS were quite harsh on Bayern, but I think people have seen a fragility in them, that defensively they do leak goals. They aren't quite as assured as previous Bayern sides. And I think that's encouraging for us, because for all the Allianz is a formidable prospect. I don't think they've lost there in a European game in 3-4 years from what I read. But they do leak goals. We score goals. If we can just get the goal at the right time, then we can make a game of it. And I think that's what we all kind of dream of, just for even a 10-15 minute spell, be in that game or get back on level peg, or even like you said, late in the game and it's 1 goal in it. Just give us something to dream about. Yeah,
something to get excited about, no doubt. And you've mentioned there just about how they play. People have talked about Kompany ball, Vincent Kompany still. He's a relative rookie as a manager. He's maybe 3 or 4 years into his managerial career between his Burnley stuff and now his Bayern Munich stuff. And this is a chance for Brendan Rodgers to show all his experience and savvy and knowledge, and maybe, identify some issues. They're exceptional going forward, but from what we've seen in the last 20-25 minutes, they can be rattled at the back, and maybe that's where Celtic need to focus on. Think less about containing them, and maybe at some point in the game, you can't do this for 90 minutes, at some point taking off the shackles and going for it and seeing where it goes. It's going to be interesting to see how both managers approach it.
Because if Eric Dyer at centre-half, it can't be that good.
You've got to have a chance.
You've got to have a chance.
Yeah. In terms of the lineup, we've obviously covered the left-back in detail, and it remains to be seen what the choice will be there. Most other positions pick themselves. The goalie will be Schmeichel. You'll have a back four of Alistair Johnson, CCV and Trusty with whoever at left-back. It'll be McGregor, Hatate and Engels, I think, with like McCowan in reserve. And then it's this same situation as last week, Joe. It's any 3 from 4. Because we finished so strongly, everyone's saying Jota, Maeda, Kuhn, it's got to be the way. But I don't think you can play like that for 90 minutes. And I wonder, will he be slightly more conservative and keep Daizen Maeda up top with Maeda on the left, Kuhn on the right, with Jota again coming in? That would be my gut feeling on it, but where do you stand?
It depends. Depends how fit Jota is in his eyes as well. I know he's had minutes, but there's playing against Dundee United at home in a league game, and then going to Allianz where it's a bigger pitch, playing against better players, a lot more requirement to run back, so the amount of running he's going to have to do, and then he's going to get a lot less time on the ball to actually do what he needs to do, Jota. So I think he will probably play Ida. If I'm thinking back to that Atalanta game, where albeit we still need to win the game, we don't need, a draw's not good enough. I think with the idea of staying in the game as long as possible, if we're going to get the ball up the pitch, we need to have a physical presence that can sort of compete, maybe win you fouls, and just generally bring the game up towards a half. We'll skip that, Mike. So yeah, I think he will go Ida. I think Kuhn is so good at what he does, and you can't ever. I think Maeda is droppable in any way, shape or form.
No, he's absolutely the man of the moment. Asim, keen to hear your three, but also just on Nicolas Kuhn, he started like a train. He got that goal that wasn't a goal, but a fairly quiet game by his own high standards, and he'll be looking to make up for that this time around against a club where he featured as a youth player as well.
He's in a mixed bag against the German sides this season, isn't he? Dortmund, Leipzig, and then Bayern. Poor in Dortmund, really, but then who wasn't? And then brilliant against Leipzig, and then last week started, obviously, what a dream start that was.
What could have been.
I still think about it every day. But then, quietish game after that. I think my three, the worry is you don't want to go with the conservative approach, like you're saying, in the hope that stay in the game, and then you don't, and then it's like almost like that's it. Do you know what I mean? Like you go a couple down when you've started Ida with that Atalanta mindset of staying in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you do it the other way around and try and get the goal or try and frighten them from the start, maybe less regret that way, even if it doesn't go well. I think a lot of the fans, from what I've seen, want the front three of Jota, Maeda and Kuhn. But I personally think he'll go with Ida. I think he'll want to try and, like you say, maybe break the game up a bit, get the ball up the pitch, win free kicks, just slow it, frustrate the fans. I just worry with that kind of approach, though it is more conservative, try to stay in a game, and then should they just end up scoring and having too much, it's almost like we're out before we've had a chance to unleash that front three.
Yeah.
I want to see that front three give it a go.
There is a lot to be said for getting out in a blaze of glory, go out on your shield and all that stuff, just have a real go at it and see where it takes you. But I think, boring as it might be in terms of podcast stuff, the three of us all think that Ida will start, and I think that would be the move, but it'll be really interesting to see what the manager decides to go with.
I actually seen a tweet, it was Tino TC, it said Yang Maeda Jota. The Allianz.
That's a burner account, John. Nothing to do with me. Couple of more bits of information. Harry Kane missed training today, Monday, with a face injury, but doesn't seem to be anything notable, so I'd be surprised if he misses out, but you never know. And the referee is a guy called Benoit Bastien, a French referee who had us in the Leipzig game. And he also had us when we beat Feyenoord at the end of last season's Champions League. So I don't know.
That's a good omen.
Maybe a good
Can't
omen.
be any worse than last week's referee.
He was poor. He was poor. So maybe that's something in Celtic's favour. We've spoken, though, more generally about the challenge we face and what the potential lineup might be. In terms of the chances of Celtic progressing, just in terms of the betting, to just win the game on the night, Celtic are a massive 14-1. That is huge. You rarely, if ever, see Celtic at that kind of price. But Asim, if we are to somehow progress, what do we need to happen on the night? Do we need a maverick performance from a Maeda, a Kuhn? Do we need a 10 outfield players plus a goalie having the games of their life? What is it that would see Celtic potentially get through this test?
A combination. I think the goalkeeper and defence will have to play similarly like Atalanta, if not better. I think we will come under a lot of pressure at times. But we'll need to have a bit more in an attack than we had that night. Obviously, we're going to have to constantly show some kind of threat at different periods. I think it will take us to have the game of the season, really, and for Bayern to be slightly off it or get a bit of luck. But as I keep the thing that gives me a bit of hope is the fact that this Bayern Munich team do leak goals, and I do think that we will score at some point tomorrow. It's just when. But I do feel like, we're going to have to be ruthless and clinical when we get the ball. But I think we're going to have to do a lot of defending. And I thought last week we did defend well. We defended our box really well. There's a lot of territory that Bayern had in and around the box, but Trusty, CCV, Johnston getting blocks in. There's nothing really overly clear cut. Now, again, they'll be home tomorrow, so that you'd imagine they'll be even more dangerous. But I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that, like I say, we'll score. And it's just a case of whether we can keep them in it.
Yeah, and Joe, I think this Celtic side have proven that we can score against anybody, and last week shows that you've scored against a top side. But I think in addition to scoring and to maybe some individuals, doing their thing and the goalie in the back four, you also potentially need a slice of luck on the night and things to go your way, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. And I agree with Asim. I think Schmeichel's probably going to be our most important player tomorrow. I think there comes a point you need to accept that should Kane start, and even if Kane doesn't start, I think there's this expectation that they're not going to follow the Leverkusen game and not have any shots in target. They're going to pepper a goal, and Schmeichel needs to. You think of any famous European performances we've had really in the last maybe 10 years, 15 years. I mean, I'm thinking Marshall at the Camp Nou, where
Gordon Marshall.
Not quite. At the game of his life.
Yeah.
At the Camp Nou. Fraser Forster against Barcelona. There's a theme here called
Arthur Boric.
Doing his thing. You even think the AC Milan game we narrowly losing extra time. It was Arthur Boric pulls off about 2 or 3 wonder saves. You need your goal to be superb, but you do need a slice of luck. You need a slice of luck in terms of maybe a break or a mistake from somewhere, but you also there are a lot of things in our control. I mean, I think last week they did have a lot of the ball, but there were times that we were giving the ball away in really slack areas of the pitch, whether it's Hatate at times playing a square pass inside, where at that level you just will get punished for it, that you will not get away with it. I think Alistair Johnson was guilty of it in the first half, Greg Taylor, that at times we're just giving them the ball back, where good teams don't do that. They just don't have a mistake in them like that, that's especially if it's unforced. So we need to be really mindful of that and make sure that we just avoid that at all costs, because good teams like that will absolutely crucify you.
Yeah, it's always possible. Last point before I get some scoreline predictions from you lads. Callum McGregor's taken a bit of criticism this season at different times, and some folks have said that they think he's really struggling in Europe, and I think it's a huge night for him personally. I think it's arguably his biggest game as Celtic captain. There's debates for some of the Rangers games and stuff over the last 3 seasons or so, but it's a huge night for him. There's no getting away from it. He's approaching 32 years of age, and he'll absolutely want to prove that not just his team and his teammates, that he belongs on this big stage and he's still got something to offer. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of McGregor, as you'll know. And it's weird because he's on his best goal scoring season, and there have been points this season where he's got a lot of slack. He's been getting a lot of criticism, unjustly at times, maybe fairly at other times. I think he's obviously getting older, so I think his legs and his athleticism, you can see that slowly catching up with him, and especially in Europe, that can get exposed against calibre like that. So yeah, I think that is a big night for him. I think his midfield, the colleagues will need to really help him out as well. I think Hatate and Engels, I think between the three of them, they're all going to need to really have a solid game off the ball, and really give him some help. But yeah, McGregor will be, as determined as anyone to kind of prove those doubters wrong. And I think, you look throughout this Champions League campaign, young boys, brilliant. He was brilliant against Leipzig as well. He's had some really good ones in there as well. The ones where he's been poor is probably where the whole team's maybe struggled a bit in points. So it's one of those, when Callum McGregor plays well, Celtic tend to play well,
That's very much become the theme, and I thought it was harsh actually, Joe. Some people slating him last week. They're saying, he doesn't control the game. I'm like, he's playing against Bayern Munich.
I know.
World Cup winners, real top. Some of these guys could move from there to any other club in Europe, to Real Madrid and all that. They're that good. And to not dominate the midfield against them, I think it's okay. I think it's acceptable. And I just think, I don't know, sometimes there's just people that are just too quick to come down on guys unnecessarily. And
or they've got some preconceived view of somebody, or they think that, and they're going to stick with that regardless of what
there's a bit of that. And I think we can accept that at his age, Callum McGregor will start to slow down. But I think at the moment, he still has huge importance and huge influence at Celtic.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything really to be ashamed of, losing a midfield battle with whoever. My mind's actually drawing a blank, but I mean,
Lothar Matthäus and Andy Bremer.
Aye, even like Musiala was acting as a sort of third midfielder in there as well, who I thought was superb last week. But I don't think it's anything really to be ashamed of if he was going to lose a midfield battle. But I don't even think he played that badly last week. I thought, again, I think it depends the way you look at it. Like, I think sometimes watching it on TV, it looks as if you're so fixated on wherever McGregor gets the ball and what he does with it. I don't really mind him playing a 5-yard pass. I don't mind him playing a 5-yard pass to somebody that's got legs. Keep the ball.
It's important in the modern game. Neil Lennon made a living out of it. He kept it simple by breaking up play and giving it to guys that could impact things more effectively. And somebody made the point, I didn't see this at the time, but somebody made the point that when they brought on Thomas Muller late in the game, last week. He physically ran out and stood right next to Callum McGregor. It was clear that his job was stop this guy making things tick. And I think if Thomas Müller and Bayern Munich identify him as a danger, then that says he's doing something well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think most managers that watch Celtic play will identify that a lot of our moves and our play starts from Callum McGregor. There was the game last season at Ibrox where he absolutely ran the show. I don't know it's against Rangers, but just generally McGregor, if you allow him to play, it's, we mentioned Neil Lennon there, but I think McGregor's got so much more technical ability to his game in terms of what he can do on the ball as well. There's an argument that he could maybe start playing a bit further forward in our midfield trio, and that's we probably do need a midfield enforcer. And I know it's a cliche now, everyone talks about it, the Victor Wanyama style of player, but I do think Celtic are crying out for that. That really physically imposing guy that can break up play, because that's never been McGregor's forte. He's not someone that breaks up the play. He's just good on it technically and starting the moves. So I do think in Europe we do need someone like that, and then maybe you can use McGregor more effectively in a trio. But for now, you're right. Look, he was up against Goretzka, Kimmich, Musiala, who's playing that kind of free role. It's no easy feat.
No. Top player. So let's hope for a big night for Calmac tomorrow. Lads, I'm going to come to you now for your scoreline predictions. Heart rolling head, whatever you feel. So I'll come to you first, Joe. What do you think?
1-0, we beat them in penalties.
I'll take it. This is a guy that started
Michael
the night,
scoring the winning penalties.
started the night slating Arnie Engels, KT out.
Can I say we're going to get beat? Come on.
Okay.
Can I say that?
So 1-0 and edging through after extra time and penalties. Asim, what do you think?
I think we'll lose 3-1. I know. I think we'll score. And I think there'll be periods where it looks, but I think they'll just have a bit much. Is that allowed? Am I allowed to say we're going to get beat?
I'll decide in the post edit whether
can I give you another scoreline as well that you can just. But I think it'll just be one step too far.
I think we can draw this game. I think to win would be a dream, an absolute dream, and you never know. Stranger things have happened, but it's such a tall order getting into their own backyard against a side who will be one of the favourites for the tournament and always will be one of the favourites for the tournament. And they do have the lead, so they don't need to chase the game at any time, whereas at some stage we absolutely will. I can see it being a so near yet so far type performance. I can see us getting some. I can always see Celtic scoring. I can always see this Celtic side scoring. But whether it's enough or whether it ends up being a draw, I don't know.
Screw it, Tino. 2-1 Celtic. Daizen Maeda last minute.
I still pray to God we go on another one.
Asim's changed. He's gone 2-1. You've gone 1-0. I'm going to go 2 each. I think it might be a valiant, but just falling short on 2 each. But we'll see what happens on the night. The game has been covered by Amazon Prime, and it's the very first time a Scottish team are featured there. Their coverage starts at 6:30, and you might see myself and Asim on it. But we're doing something today, a bit of recording with Gabriel Clark, a bit of feature on Henrik Larsson. So we'll see if that makes the final cut or not. Just a couple of final things as we see out the show. A couple of new songs debuted over the weekend, Joe. You might have caught them. An Adam Maeda song by the Green Brigade and one for Daizen Maeda by the Bhoys. Yet no song for Yang. What's the story?
It's an absolute disgrace. Youngster's Paradise. I've seen that getting floated about. It needs to happen. In tribute to Coolio, GBNF.
Big Celtic fan, Coolio. Did you hear the Maeda songs, Maeda? Any comments on those?
I heard is it a Tequila one with Maeda? It's dreadful. I'm going to say it now. Yeah. Sorry to all any Green Brigade members out there, but no, I'm not.
I think it was the Bhoys that done the Maeda.
The Bhoys had done it. Definitely shocking.
You going to give us a rendition or?
Nah. Leave it for another time.
For the bag of cans.
Wait till I decide I like it.
Fair enough. Asim, just a final point, Kasper Schmeichel, we've covered him a couple of times, but he is now chasing down a clean sheet record.
Wow.
26 is the record across a campaign. Celtic done it first in 2011-12 season, and I think Rangers equalled that in the COVID season, which doesn't really count anyway. So Kasper Schmeichel, he's got 19 league clean sheets so far, that's out of 26 games, and there's 12 games to go, so he would need to keep 8 to beat the record. Can he do it?
Oh aye. Like it's mad when you think only Aberdeen have scored in the league this season at Celtic Park.
Incredible.
It's fantastic numbers, and you don't even, like, when you're at the games, it doesn't even look like the other opposition are going to score. This last run,
it's credit to his defenders as well, isn't it? You know, it's not just the goalie that's playing a part in that.
And he'll be the first to say that. We give nothing away. Very rarely do we give chances. So yeah, we carry on like that, and I think whatever happens with this Bayern game, obviously, we pray for the best, and hopefully we'll extend our European run. But worst case scenario, I think Rodgers will use then the records, and obviously they've got the Scottish Cup still, to keep that motivation going. Because with us being so far in the league, you don't want it to fall flat. You know, you look at Ange's kind of second season form around this time of the year kind of dipped a wee bit. I think Rodgers will use that to spur on the players. The players will use that to spur themselves on. But that's fantastic from Schmeichel. And I think Peter Schmeichel, don't know if you caught that interview with his son last week on CBS as well. Apparently, any time he's been at the game, though, we've lost in Dortmund, lost in Villa, lost last week. So
stay away, Peter.
Stay away.
But yeah, looking forward to seeing that tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think whether it's Schmeichel's clean sheet record or different things, these wee mini milestones, Joe, are just really important to keep players motivated, because it can be a long and intense season, and even like getting into a Wraith Rovers game, for example, just looking back very slightly, a different type of pressure, because you're absolutely expected to win, no excuses. So how do you motivate the players? And I believe the manager set them different milestones in terms of pressing and reducing their opportunities and all these types of things. So that's interesting to see, and I think that just keeps standards high. And yeah, I think there's every chance Kasper Schmeichel beats that record. Joe, I'll come to you for your final comments for the week.
I mean, looking forward to tomorrow. It's definitely a unique occasion. I mean, obviously we're going to beat them in penalties tomorrow, but that aside, I think that, you know, things are looking up in general. There's a lot to be excited about. I feel like I say this every time I come on this show now, which is great. But there is always something to be excited about.
We'll only bring you on when there is something to be excited about. So
you can't see me when we're losing and we're not doing well. But yeah, I think ahead of Tuesday, whatever happens. The old case we've got a really, really good chance to just show what we can do. And if we get absolutely scalped tomorrow just from trying to play our own game, then I don't overly mind it. I would just rather we go out, give it our all, and yeah, see what happens. We could be in party mode come Tuesday night.
I think the big thing for me though is doing ourselves justice, whatever that result looks like. But Asim, final word goes to you.
Yeah, it is. It's just to echo what Joe says. It is exciting though. Like, we've got a knockout round against Bayern Munich, and we're still in the tie, you know, and we've got that to look forward to tomorrow. It's been a roller coaster of a Champions League campaign.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, we can dare to dream. We can dare to dream. I remember when I've watched us play Bayern now a few times, obviously back in Martin O'Neill's time as well. You might be too young to remember that one, but we were 1-0 up in the old Olympia Stadion, if you remember, before Magnus Hedman had a bit of a howler in the
Big Agnes.
So you know, we've had some real good performances and results over the last couple of decades at times in Europe away as well. And I just think it's going to be one kind of mammoth effort needed tomorrow. But yeah, as you say, I just want us to be competitive and make ourselves proud that regardless of the outcome, we've given it our all.
Yeah, let's give it our all and see where it takes us. So that wraps things up on this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to Asim and Joe, and thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back on Wednesday with the post-match reaction, whatever happens in Munich, and then on Friday, ahead of Saturday's lunchtime kick-off against Hibs at Easter Road. And don't forget to check out the Celtic Exchange Plus if you want to enjoy completely ad-free listening for every episode, as well as early access to the Celtic Exchange Weekly. There's a link to all of that in the show notes. But until next time, enjoy the big one against Bayern. Have a brilliant week. We'll see you again really soon.